In the earliest hours of Thursday, an explosion was detected at the Nevada test site, with some sources saying that the explosion was unconfirmed to be that of a nuclear detonation. Officials from the Defense Department refused to comment on these reports, saying that the events in question was an ongoing matter.
International observers from the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization, CTBTO, detected the explosion at Nevada, the home to numerous and previous nuclear tests conducted in the 1940s to the 1960s. CTBTO officials say it was the equivalent to that of an around 4 to 5 kiloton explosion, with the United States government denying any involvement.
On Friday the 14th, the White House released a press statement announcing a nuclear accident had occurred, caused by the detonation of a warhead within the state of Nevada. The White House confirmed that U.S. forces were deployed to the scene and no injuries were reported. However, reports have since surfaced of UN forces moving into the area and what appear to be bodies being carried out. The White House at this time denies any involvement by international entities and reaffirms the stance that no one was injured. More at 7.
The atomic era was a pinnacle moment for the world. The United States with Project Manhattan and the Soviets' initial atomic program with RDS-1 in the middle of the 20th century. The Authority, unbeknownst to the Americans in the 1940s, developed their own nuclear weapons with the assistance in development of Nucorp. Unlike the Manhattan Project, these nuclear weapons were inefficient and barely produced a kiloton explosion. Despite this, the weapons were highly dangerous due to their radioactive yield, which proved to be far effective in the fight against the Howlers in the New Swabia Rift. As the world continued to modernize under the heightened tension between the Americans and Soviets, the Authority too modernized and developed international relations with numerous national governments. A secretive handshake, if you will, to ensure the normalcy and continuation of society. Regardless, the Authority knew the importance of maintaining relations to ensure their operations to continue without resistance. One single mistake can easily damage their credibility and easily cause total calamity with other governments. They knew something was going to happen to their bonds, but they never expected a scale that resulted in worldwide attention. A masquerade almost occurred, but the scars left behind by Site 14 were the mark of a new chapter in Authority history.
A few seconds later, the detonation bubble collapsed. This caused a new plume to be thrust upward through the primary cloud. The cloud approached Barcel but did not cover her. These views were from the destroyer Preston. Other observers had different views.
Things got ugly when information about Site 14 within back channels spiraled out of control. The Directorate ordered the immediate cover-up of the entire event, but the damage had already been done. The explosion was already detected by several institutions and governments. One such was the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization. Set up in 1997, their goal was to monitor the world for any nuclear explosion through a monitor system, such as seismographs and geosatellites in orbit. Needless to say, they were the ones to report their findings to the United Nations, and eventually to the UNAAC. No one within the international community were aware of the seriousness of the incident, but as the story developed, they feared that this was a peak point of the secrecy of the anomalous. The United States government were willing to assist the Authority in the cleanup operations, and some international forces from the United Nations International Security Anomalous Assistance Force, UNISAF, were also deployed to assist operations on ground. The Authority had other things in mind. The events leading up to this were damning and potentially dangerous to their operations. The Directorate ordered complete compartmentalization of the events and wanted to carry on the blame to someone to protect the organization's interest. Anders was, after all, the man behind the incident, but not entirely caused by him. An anomaly designated as 831, or Aegis, was a factor in the incident. An AI system developed by the authority and activated by unknown means, in turn deactivating the fail-safes and leading to said event. If word got out that an authority technology caused this whole fiasco, they would have to worry less about humiliation and incompetence, but rather the relations and trust built by them would be sincerely questioned by the other world leaders. The UN Security Council, and eventually the rest of the World Security Council, held an emergency meeting at the UN headquarters. China and Russia weren't as reluctant, given how they doubted the authorities' perspective on the events that took place. The Russians, at this point, wanted full disclosure and publication to the world, as they seemed to be aware of the Aegis activation. The political aspect seemed to be in tatters, but the authority prevailed and managed to convince the Russians to buy in the story. Everyone agreed to put this behind, but another problem had risen, and that was the UN white paper leaks. Someone had leaked UN documents to the media about the existence of the UNAAC, and things almost got out of hand. A certain Dr. Andrea was the one behind the leaks, an authority researcher and a supporter in public transparency. Unfortunately for her, her credibility was in tatters after the US Department of Justice charged her as a Russian GRU asset who was, supposedly, behind in numerous espionages and disinformation campaigns within the United States. To further destroy her credibility, the Russian government affirmed Dr. Andrea as a Russian asset. Her swift exposure and arrest shocked a lot of people, especially a few within the authority. It seemed the Directorate convinced both governments to partake in on the matter and bury the last few ashes of what was left during the aftermath of Site 14.